Why does almost being at the finish line often feel harder than when you get started? Whether it's a training cycle, reaching a goal weight, completing a work project, or finishing a class, being just minutes away from a milestone can feel unexpectedly heavy. It's louder, and sometimes it's more uncomfortable than the climb that got you there. Because for many of us, that last stretch isn't about effort anymore. It's about change. And our nervous systems tend to react to change long before our minds catch up. I saw this play out in myself over the last couple of weeks. Yesterday, I finished my third course of my PhD. The course was in statistics, and this was a class I was convinced would be the hardest one in my program. And it turns out I'm actually pretty good at statistics. Who knew I was that level of science nerd? But 6 days before completing the class, anxiety showed up. That final stretch felt longer. It felt heavier and harder, when it should have felt easier because most of my work was already done. See, the closer that I got to success, the louder my thoughts became. Pressure sharpened. My nervous system felt like it was pacing the room, like, are we really going to get done with everything? Because the last 5% of any journey isn't about pushing anymore. It's the space where excitement starts to collide with fear. It's where finishing something means that things are about to shift, and your body knows it way before your mind does. And that's why being almost done can feel harder than the beginning. It's why the finish line can feel more destabilizing than that climb. And why discomfort is not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that something inside of you is reorganizing. Being almost at the end is sometimes the hardest part of the journey. So let's talk about it today. Welcome to episode 42 of Making Mel Health in the Hustle. This podcast is a place where motherhood meets muscle, ambition meets exhaustion, and figuring out how to prioritize my health journey into the insanely beautiful chaos of a busy life is what I talk about. Some days it'll look messy and other days flawless. But no matter what kind of day I'm having, I can assure you I will tell the truth and do my best to give you some good ideas and insight that'll help you prioritize your own journey. So there's a moment in every goal where you can see a finish line. And that moment comes with a very specific emotional cocktail. Excitement because you're so close. Fear because now it's real. Pressure because the stakes may feel higher. And vulnerability because you're about to be seen in a different way. Your brain can get very loud during this time period because it senses change. And even good change can be very stressful. This is a moment where your identity is starting to shift. You're not who you were, or maybe not where you were when you started. But you're not fully where you're going to end up or the person you're becoming yet. You're stuck in that in-between. And the in-between is where things can feel the heaviest. So why does that last stretch feel heavier? There's a lot of science that backs this up. First of all, there's cognitive fatigue. By the time you reach that final stretch of something meaningful, your brain isn't fresh anymore. It's been planning, deciding, adjusting, managing expectations, holding pressure, working hard for an extended period of time. Even if you're capable and even if you're doing really well, your cognitive resources are depleted. So when motivation dips or things suddenly feel harder, it's not because you've lost momentum, it's because your brain's tired. When you come close to the completion of any task, your system has less tolerance for stress, uncertainty, and even decision-making. Small tasks can feel heavier. Minor obstacles get bigger, not because they are, but because your ability to process and respond is already stretched thin. There's also something else happening. You're avoiding loss. When you're close to finishing, your brain becomes hyper-focused on what could go wrong, not because you're pessimistic. I'm an optimist, and it happens to me all the time. And that's because our nervous system tries to protect us. When you have invested time, energy, identity, and hope into a goal, your brain scans for threats, mistakes, or reasons to slow down. Your brain starts telling you, don't mess this up. Be careful. What if something goes wrong right now? That heightened vigilance can feel like anxiety or even self-doubt, but it's actually your nervous system trying to protect you from loss. Not failure, but loss of what you've worked so hard for. There can also be fear of success. Sometimes, success itself can feel threatening, not consciously, but at a deeper level. Your nervous system may start asking questions like, who am I going to be after this? Or what's going to change when I finish? Will I still belong where I'm at? Any time that you have growth in your life, it requires expansion. And expansion often means leaving behind familiar versions of yourself, even ones that felt safe. So as you approach success, doubt can get louder. Not because you're incapable, but because your system is encountering unfamiliar territory. This is where fear and excitement start to feel almost indistinguishable. Success can breed doubt. There's a quote from Marianne Williamson's famous passage in A Return to Love, and it says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most." And there's a lot of truth in that. Success can feel really unnerving. And here's another important piece. Our nervous system activates. Impending change, even positive change, activates our stress response. Your body doesn't know how to categorize what's good or bad. It categorizes all of it as unknown. So your nervous system prepares you for survival. That can look like restlessness. It can look like overthinking. How about procrastination? Or the sudden urge to slow everything down. If the final stretch has ever felt heavier than the entire journey, this is why. It's not because your disciplines disappeared. It's not self-sabotage. It's your nervous system responding to this transition. When change in our lives feels close and your capacity is already stretched thin, your system looks for familiarity. Your nervous system is doing what it does best, trying to keep you safe. And that can be when the sabotage zone shows up. Now, this is a point where things start to get confusing and even a little weird. You're close, you've done most of the work, and instead of feeling relieved or motivated, you might notice that you're slowing down, you're overthinking, you're wanting to step away altogether. That's the sabotage zone. Not because you're trying to ruin anything, but because your nervous system is looking for safety. When your internal capacity is already taxed and you're standing on the edge of change, your system will often reach for familiar coping strategies, not to stop you, but to protect you from the uncertainty of what comes next, because the unknown in any realm can feel threatening. So procrastination can show up, not out of laziness, but as a way to delay the moment of transition. Now, I found myself in that area a lot the last few weeks, and I'm not normally somebody who procrastinates. I block time off to get schoolwork done. And I found myself during those times talking to friends on the phone a little longer, or even wanting a nap so badly that I start falling asleep in the middle of reading or in the middle of finishing an assignment. I had to take breaks to make coffee more often. And I am normally someone who takes care of things right away, but so many things became heavy that I started putting them off. My nervous system was fighting to protect me. Perfectionism can also get loud during this time, not because the work suddenly isn't good enough, but because finishing feels exposed. And sometimes there's even an urge to quit, not because you can't do it, but because stopping feels safer than stepping into something new. And that isn't failure. It is a normal nervous system response. And once you understand that, you can set aside any feelings you have of shame or failure or self-doubt, and you can meet this moment with steadiness instead of force. The finish line isn't just a moment that you cross. It's an emotional landscape that you move through. By the time you reach it, you're not just completing a task, you're leaving something behind. Maybe it's a version of yourself, or a season, or an old identity that carried you through the work. And even when the outcome is good, even when the goal has been something that you really wanted, there can be grief, there can be fear, there can be pressure, and even a quiet sense of maybe disorientation. Because finishing means being seen. It means being evaluated. It means stepping into a newer version of yourself that hasn't fully settled yet. You're no longer where you were when you started, but you're not fully anchored in where you're going to be either. And that in between can feel really lonely, uncertain, and strangely heavy, even in the moments that look like success from the outside. So the question becomes, how do we navigate the final stretch without losing ourselves? That final stretch doesn't ask for more force. It asks for a different way of moving. It requires more presence. This isn't a moment to sprint harder or demand perfection from yourself. It's a moment to move differently. This isn't the moment to push harder or rush faster or demand perfection. It's a moment to slow the pressure and stay present. What helps here is simple. It's about choosing steadiness over intensity. When everything in you wants to panic or sprint, stop and choose consistency instead. Finish the one small thing, then the next small thing. Momentum during this time period comes from completing what's right in front of you, not from pressure. Name what's actually happening. Instead of asking, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do this? I've done this the whole time. Ask yourself, okay, what's changing right now? Why is my nervous system reacting this way? Recognize that you're not unmotivated and that you're in transition. Naming that space matters. Naming what is happening removes its power, because awareness can create space between the way you feel and the way you react. Remember who you are in this moment. This phrase isn't about trying to finish. This phase is about not proving anything. It's about recognizing that you're someone who follows through, even when it's uncomfortable. When motivation fades, identity is what's going to carry you through. Settle your body before you try to think your way forward. If you're really wound up and your thoughts are racing, logic's not going to help you during that time period. You need to ground yourself. Stop and slow your breathing. Create a sense of safety for yourself first. A calmer body makes clearer decisions. A calm, emotionally regulated body creates a clear mind. Let go of the idea of having that perfect ending. You don't need a flawless finish. You need a real one. Finishing isn't a performance. It's an act of trust in yourself and in the work you've already done. My friend Coach Patty had to remind me several times over the last few weeks that C's get degrees. Now, I know that's a funny phrase, but this phrase helped me get my anxiety under control, even though I was pulling an A for most of this class, and I will either finish with an A or a high B. Her words helped me put things in perspective. C's get degrees. Throughout this course, as I navigated each paper and test, I also shared my experience with my community, and I brought them along with me. One of the key phrases that I used throughout this process was that I was striving hard not to be a knucklehead. My community at Lifting Your Life Coaching encouraged me to change that phrase to, I'm striving to be a brainiac, which I thought was really funny, but also insightful. They brought that identity of me to the forefront to remind me how they see me, and that also helped to push me through. Completion isn't something that you perform, it's something you follow through on, and knowing that you can is what matters. So if you're standing in the final stretch right now, and you're almost there with just a little bit left, don't rush just to be done. Use Coach Val's pause. Notice what it took to get here. Let the discomfort be there for a moment and recognize it for what it is. It's not a warning sign, but it's a response to change. You don't need to force your way through to the end. You can finish steady and you can finish grounded, because the real accomplishment isn't just finishing. It's knowing clearly and honestly that you can. That knowing stays with you. It changes how you approach what comes next. You recognize the final stretch for what it is. It's just part of the process. It's not a problem to solve. And the next time, you won't move toward the almost finished space blindly anymore. You will understand what that space is asking of you, and you can meet it with steadiness instead of confusion or resistance. And each time you find yourself almost finished again, you won't push back harder. You'll move through it wiser than you did the last time. That's my hope for you. So until next time, onward and upward, my friends.